Alright, I'm in a shed talking to myself, and this is a Ford 9-inch axle housing built for my Rover P5. I built this because I'm shoving LS1 into my Mark 1A, and the original axle would explode if I put 350 pounds per foot of torque through it. You can make up your own jokes about putting 9 inches in the rear. I'm way too good for that shit. It's a strange engineering heavy duty housing, and these are 3-inch axle tubes to match the Rover P5 and late big Ford axle ends. This has been built for an overall housing width of 1,384mm. That should mean that when all this becomes a complete axle with brakes and drive shafts, the faces of the hubs should be more or less where they would be on the Rover P5. Hauser Racing worked out what all the dimensions should be, stuck all this together for me. That's why the welds are so nice, because I didn't do them. Now, if you hadn't noticed, and also if you had, these tubes are different lengths. This side is slightly shorter than the other side. That's because this is built for a centred pinion. The pinion on a Ford 9-inch is slightly offset that way, so this side needs to be somewhat shorter. Or maybe I've got that backwards, but you get the idea. Let's talk about the brakes. Here we've got Wilwood 4-pot calipers. I've also got 11-inch vented discs sitting in a box over there, but I can't fit those until my drive shafts and pumpkin show up. And these are overkill, and they're going to totally overpower my front brakes, and so I'm going to need to find an upgrade for those, but I don't have to think about that right now. You'll notice that the ends of these brake lines are flexible. You might be thinking, why would you make them flexible? It's a live axle, the ends don't move relative to the rest of it. Here's why. If I want to remove a brake disc, that might be to change the discs or adjust the built-in handbrake. To do that, I'll need to get the calipers out of the way. If I have hard lines going all the way to the calipers, I can either disconnect the hard line at the calipers and I'll have to bleed the brakes after reassembling, remove all the hard lines from the axle along with the calipers, or just kind of like flex the hard line, get the calipers out of the way, and you just sort of hope it bends nicely and doesn't fold and also doesn't break when I put it back. As the kids say these days, ain't nobody got time for that. So option D is have a flexi at the end. If I need to move the caliper out the way, I undo these 2 bolts and move it out the way. Only a tiny bit more time now to save me a lot more time later. So these flexis are made by Hell Performance. They're 1/8 MPT on that end and M10 on this end. I love Hell Performance so much. Like, I ordered these from their website at 12:38 PM and they arrived at my house at 11:40 AM the next day for custom made lines. I want to give them a hug. And here are some brake hard lines. They're copper nickel alloy like every other brake hard line you'll ever see, but I do have black heat shrink on them, and that's what happens if you watch Sarah and Tune too much. Yeah, it looks really nice. Now, I could have just cable tied the hard lines to the axle. My family does that with their vehicles, and honestly it works as well as anything. But I didn't buy an axle housing this pretty to go and make it look ugly. So instead I made up and welded on these little hard points with captive M6 bolts for P-clips. I know I could have just welded an M6 bolt straight to the axle, but I didn't. I still need to tidy up all these welds here because my welding's terrible, but that'll come right after I get some paint on this. And here is where it's actually Rover P5 or close to it. These aren't actually Rover P5 purchase. I didn't want to cut up my old axle for them because the axle was complete and original and in good condition. I didn't really want to chop it up, so I got a bare housing that was kicking around someone's yard to cut the purchase off that, and those purchases turned out to be fucked, so I couldn't use them. Instead I got 2 pieces of 80mm box section, welded them back to back, shoved a 3-inch hole saw through it, welded some shit onto it, shaped it a bit, and boom, you've got Rover P5 spring purchase. And surprisingly, despite the crude method of fabrication, they're awfully close to the dimensions of the original. There are 2 actual Rover P5 parts on this axle, which are these little donuts behind the shock absorber. I couldn't be bothered to turn them up on the lathe, so I cut them off the fucked spring purchase. They'll do the job. Anyway, I hope you like the sound of my voice, because I know I do. For more regular automotive content, don't forget to subscribe to someone else, because I don't post anything. If you hit the like button, the number next to the like button will go up. I don't know, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I will tell you thank you sincerely for watching.